The best gift would be if you just died. Those were the exact words my daughter said to me. Cold, steady, and without a flicker of hesitation. And that was the moment something inside me finally broke. Before I tell you everything, let me make one thing clear. If you're watching this, please subscribe, leave a like, and tell me where you're watching from. What I'm about to share is something no parent should ever live through. And if it happened to me, it can happen to anyone. My name is Margaret, and for most of my life, I believed I was a good mother. Maybe not perfect, but loving, dedicated, and sacrificing. I raised my daughter Emma alone after my husband died. I put aside my dreams, my health, and in many ways, my entire life just to make sure she had everything she needed. Food, school, security. I worked double shifts, gave up vacations, cut corners on groceries, wore the same shoes for 5 years. Also, she could have what I never had. But nothing prepared me for the moment my own daughter looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you really want to give me a gift, just die already." First I thought I misheard. Maybe she was joking. Maybe she was angry. Maybe it was the stress of preparing her wedding, or the recent financial troubles her fiancé had brought into their lives. But she repeated it. Slower, straighter, more deliberate. "You're old. You're tired. You're a burden. The best gift would be if you just died." My throat tightened. My ears rang. And the kitchen around us seemed to tilt. This was the child I breastfed. The child I stayed awake nights monitoring fevers. The child I protected from every danger, real or imagined. Now she wanted me gone. Erased. And the worst part, she wanted it for money. Over the last years, I'd been funding Emma and her fiancé's life. Their rent, their wedding deposits, the down payment on their future home. Even the endless emergencies that were never actually emergencies. I was her lifeline, not out of obligation, out of love. But that night, staring at her face twisted in disgust, I realized something chilling. She didn't see me as her mother. She saw me as an ATM tool, a wallet with a heartbeat. And the moment she decided the heartbeat was inconvenient, she wished it gone. I felt something shift inside me, a quiet, heavy, decisive click. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. Clarity I should have had years ago. So I did the one thing she never imagined I'd have the courage to do. Cancelled everything. The funding, the support, the wedding payments, the house deposit, all of it. Her reaction, her screaming, her threats, her attempt to turn family, friends, and even the police against me. That came later. But that moment, that single, sharp, unforgivable moment, was the beginning of a truth I never wanted to face. And the beginning of the revenge I never planned to take, but absolutely deserved. This is the story of how my daughter tried to destroy me, and how, without meaning to, I destroyed everything she thought she controlled. I barely slept after hearing those words. The best gift would be if you just died. They echoed in my skull all night, growing sharper every time I replayed them. By sunrise, I had convinced myself that Emma would regret it. That she would knock on my door crying, say she didn't mean it, blame stress, panic, anything. I was ready to accept even the weakest excuse if it meant believing I still had a daughter. But by morning she was worse. She walked into my house like she owned it, didn't say good morning, didn't even look at me. She opened the fridge, sighed loudly, and said, "You can't even keep real groceries in here? God, no wonder Dad died early." It was like a slap I didn't see coming. Cruel. Precise. Designed to land exactly where it hurt. "Emma," I whispered. "What's going on? Why are you talking to me like this?" She slammed the fridge shut. "No more pretending. I'm done tiptoeing around you. You're old, Mom. You're slow. You're holding me back. Liam and I can't live our lives while you cling to us like some responsibility." Responsibility. That word twisted through me like a knife. "You're my daughter," I managed. "Of course I help." "No," she cut me off, stepping so close I could smell the perfume I bought her. "You fund. That's your role. You're supposed to make my life easier. And lately, you've become a problem. Problem. I, the mother who raised her alone, was now a problem. She crossed her arms. Look, we're getting married in 6 weeks. We need the rest of the money. And you need to get over whatever dramatic episode you had last night. Just transfer it. Today. I stared at her. At her eyes, so cold. At her expression, so entitled. At her mouth, the same mouth that used to say, "Mommy, don't leave, sleep next to me." It felt like I was talking to a stranger in my daughter's skin. "I'm not transferring anything," I said quietly. She blinked, confused, then laughed. A sharp, mocking laugh that echoed through the kitchen. "You're kidding, right? You're refusing." Oh my God, Liam was right. You really are losing it. My heart dropped. Liam said that. He smirked. He said you're becoming dead weight. And I agree. But fine, if you want to play games, then let's play. I felt the temperature in the room drop. She lifted her phone with a calmness that terrified me. You either transfer the money, or I tell everyone you're mentally unstable. I'll tell the family you're forgetting things. I'll tell the church you've been acting paranoid. We'll get you evaluated, Mom. And once you're declared unfit, guess who controls your assets? My breath caught. Emma, that's abuse. That's manipulation. That's survival, she said. My survival. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think I care if you cry. You think I care if you're hurt. You raised me alone, great. Congratulations. But this is my life now. And your job is simple. Give us what we need. Nothing more. My knees went weak. I gripped the counter so I wouldn't collapse. How long have you felt this way? I whispered. She didn't hesitate. Years. That word hit me harder than everything else combined. Years. While I cooked for her. While I paid her debts. While I defended her from gossip. While I ignored red flags and warned everyone not to judge her too harshly. She hated me. She resented me. She used me. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a thread snapping after years of being stretched too tight. Took a breath. Then another. Then finally said the words that changed everything. No more. She froze. What? I'm done paying. I'm done being the villain in your head. And I'm done pretending you love me. You want control. You want my money. You want to watch me crumble so you and Liam can live comfortably. I shook my head. You'll get nothing. She stared at me, stunned. Then her face twisted into something I can only describe as hatred. You have no idea what you've done, she whispered. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. No idea at all. She turned, grabbed her purse and walked out. But before she closed the door, she said something that made my blood run cold. If you want war, Mom, you'll get it. The door slammed. And for the first time in my life, I knew my daughter truly meant it. She wasn't angry. She wasn't emotional. She was planning something. And I wasn't ready. Not even close. For the storm she was about to bring into my life. I tried to tell myself she didn't mean it. That even if Emma was angry, even if her words were poisonous, she wouldn't actually do anything. She was my daughter. My only child. Surely some piece of the girl I raised still lived inside her. Hidden under the layers of resentment and entitlement. But by the next morning I learned the truth. She meant every word. At 8:12 a.m., someone banged on my door so violently I thought the wood might splinter. I hurried from the kitchen expecting, hoping, it was Emma ready to apologize. Instead, when I opened the door, 2 police officers stood on my porch. My blood went cold instantly. Are you Margaret Hale? The taller officer asked. Yes, I said, my voice barely audible. Is something wrong? We received a suspicious wellness call, he replied. Your daughter reported that you were behaving erratically, endangering yourself, and possibly experiencing a psychotic episode. We need to check that you're safe. I felt my stomach drop so fast it nearly made me dizzy. Whoa, this couldn't be happening. Not already. Wellness call. I stuttered. My daughter told you that? She was very concerned for your mental state. the second officer added gently. She said you threatened self-harm. My heart nearly stopped. I've never said anything like that, I whispered, horrified. I'm completely fine. She must have misunderstood something. But I knew she hadn't misunderstood anything. This was deliberate. This was strategic. This was revenge. Ma'am, the officer said, mind if we take a look around? My hands were trembling as I stepped aside, letting them in. They inspected everything. My kitchen, my medicine cabinet, my bedroom. I stood in the hallway feeling humiliated, invaded, powerless. I wasn't dangerous. I wasn't unstable. I wasn't suicidal. But Emma knew exactly which lies would trigger the fastest, most serious reaction. You seem fine to us, one officer finally said. No signs of distress. Everything looks normal. Of course it did. Kept my home tidy. My life orderly. Despite everything, I still had dignity. Do you have someone you can call to stay with you? The other officer asked softly. The implication cut deeper than any insult. I don't need supervision, I said, my voice cracking. I'm not a danger to myself. I'm not confused. I know exactly what's happening. They exchanged a sympathetic look, the kind that made my skin crawl. Sometimes, the taller one said carefully, family situations can get complicated. If anything changes, please call us. They left. And as soon as the door closed, I collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking. Not from fear, though fear was certainly there, but from realization. That wasn't an emotional outburst. That wasn't anger. That was a calculated first strike. And it worked. Emma had planted the first seed. The idea that I was unstable, that I was losing touch with reality. I covered my face with my hands and forced myself to breathe. I wanted to cry, but crying felt like acceptance, like surrender, like proving her right. I would not cry. But I did reach for my phone. Called Emma. She didn't answer. Called again. Nothing. Finally, on the third attempt, she picked up. Her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. Mom, are you okay? The police said you were fine, but I'm still really worried. You've been acting so strange lately. Emma, I said, my voice low and shaking. How could you do that to me? You told the police I threatened to hurt myself. Oh my God, she said, gasping dramatically. I never said that. That must be a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The officers had quoted her word for word. Stop lying, I snapped, my patience cracking. You tried to make it look like I'm losing my mind. A pause. Then her tone shifted. Smooth, confident, venomous. Well, Mom, if you keep refusing to help Liam and me, I might start to believe you are losing it. For a moment I couldn't speak. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. Emma, I whispered, I raised you, fed you, I sacrificed for you. Why are you doing this? Because, she said coldly, you owe me. And I'm done begging. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, my pulse pounding hard enough to hurt. I felt the house around me shift, no longer a safe place but a battlefield. She wasn't just angry. She wasn't just entitled. She was willing to destroy me to get what she wanted. That's when it hit me. If she could manipulate the police, what else could she manipulate? My reputation, my finances, my freedom, and most terrifying of all, my sanity. I realized then that this wasn't a conflict between mother and daughter. This was a war, and she had just fired the first shot. I didn't sleep after the argument. I didn't even pretend to. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. Sharp, emotionless, almost rehearsed. The best gift would be if you just died. It replayed like a broken record, scratching deeper each time. Not because of the cruelty. Children say cruel things. But because of the emptiness behind it. No tremor. No hesitation. Just delivery. Like it wasn't born in her. Like it was given to her. By who? I already knew the answer. But I needed proof before I burned everything down. By 6 a.m. I was fully dressed, sitting at the dining table with a cold cup of coffee and a head full of regrets. When I heard her bedroom door open, I didn't turn around. Just listened. Her steps were slow, cautious, like someone entering a room where a crime had taken place. "Morning," she muttered. "Morning." Silence stretched between us. The good kind never existed anymore. Only the tense, brittle kind that cracks as soon as one of us breathes wrong. She walked past me toward the fridge. No apology. No frustration. No guilt. Only avoidance. I watched her hands tremble as she poured juice. She wasn't as composed as she wanted to seem. A small, human part of her was still there, buried under layers someone else had built. "Lila," I finally said, "sit down. We need to talk." She froze, then slowly sat. And when she looked at me, her eyes were glossy, not with tears but with fear. Not fear of me. Fear for herself. "What did he tell you?" I asked softly. She blinked. "What?" "Your father." Her lips pressed together. "Lila, what did he say to you about me?" At first she didn't respond. Then, something broke in her expression, like she couldn't hold the lie steady anymore. "He said you were going to ruin my life." My breath faltered. "Ruin your life how?" "That you wanted to take everything from me. That you wanted me to depend on you forever. That you were only paying for my future so you could control it." Every word felt like a blade slicing something vital inside me. She believed him. She truly believed him. And the worst part, he knew exactly what strings to pull. "Anything else?" I asked, even though I already felt sick. She hesitated, then whispered. "He said you never loved me. Only the idea of me." The room spun. For a moment I thought I might fall out of my chair. I covered my mouth with my hand, swallowing the kind of pain no parent prepares for. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. "Lila, none of that is true." She looked down. "I don't know what's true anymore." And there it was, the honest, painful center of our entire collapse. She wasn't cruel. She was lost, confused, manipulated by someone who knew her insecurities better than I ever had the chance to learn, because he planted them. "I canceled the funding," I said. She flinched. "But not to punish you. Not to hurt you. I canceled it because someone was using it to turn you against me." Her eyes widened, confusion flooding in. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Your father was using the future I was trying to secure for you to twist your perception of me. Every dollar I spent, he turned into poison. He made you think love was control." She looked torn, like two different realities were being pitched inside her head. Then she whispered, "But why would he do that?" "Because he always hated that you loved me more. Because he never won a single battle that mattered. Because the only way he could hurt me was through you." But I didn't say any of that. Instead I said, "Because he's afraid of losing you." A soft, injured admission broke through her stubbornness. "I don't want to lose either of you." For the first time in months, her voice sounded like the little girl she used to be. The one who drew pictures of our family holding hands, the one who believed people were good, the one who thought love was permanent. I reached across the table slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. When I touched her hand, she didn't flinch. She even leaned forward a little, like she wasn't ready to let go. "Lila," I said, "you don't have to choose between us. But you do need to know the truth. And I promise, I'm going to show you everything." Her eyes lifted to mine. Hope flickered. Fear lingered. And then she whispered, "What if I don't want to know?" "Then," I said gently, "the truth will come anyway. And when it does, I want you to be standing with me, not against me." She swallowed hard. And for a split second, just long enough for my heart to believe in miracles, she nodded. It was small, barely there, but it was something. A door cracking open, a light slipping through. But our moment didn't last. Because that was the morning the first letter arrived. A letter addressed to me. In my ex-husband's handwriting. Delivered by hand. No stamp. No return address. And inside it was just one sentence. You started a war you will not win. And he was right. I'd started a war. But not the one he thought. Because I wasn't fighting him. I was fighting for her. And I wasn't planning to lose. The letter sat on the table between us like a venomous thing. Small, silent, but carrying the unmistakable sting of someone who knew exactly how to hurt. Lila hadn't seen the words inside. I made sure of that. The moment I read the sentence, "You started a war you will not win," I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. But hiding it didn't stop the aftershock. It echoed through every breath I took. Because my ex-husband was many things. Irresponsible, impulsive, manipulative. But subtle threats. Personal deliveries. That wasn't his style. Unless he was desperate. And a desperate man is the most dangerous thing in the world. The rest of the morning blurred by. I still had to go to work, still had responsibilities, still had a life that was supposed to function even as it cracked open. Lila stayed quiet while I got my bag. I could feel her watching me, like she was trying to read a version of me she hadn't been allowed to see for years. Before I left, she finally spoke. "Mom, are you okay?" It was such a simple question, yet I'd waited so long to hear concern coming from her instead of about her that I nearly broke. "I'm fine," I said gently. "We'll talk more after school, all right?" She nodded. Low. Uncertain. Human again. Then I stepped outside. Right into a trap I hadn't known was waiting. A man was standing across the street. Not moving. Not pretending to be casual. Just standing. Watching the house. And when I looked at him, he didn't look away. He smiled. Small knowing smile. Not threatening, worse. Confident. Like he already knew how the story ended. And blinked. And just like that, he turned and got into a dark SUV, driving away slowly as if daring me to follow. I didn't. Not because I was scared, but because something in my gut whispered. This isn't random. This is connected. A letter. A stranger. My daughter's sudden cruelty. The money. The manipulation. It was all pieces of something larger. Something someone had been building quietly, patiently, for years. And now it was beginning to surface. At work I couldn't focus. My hands shook so hard I spilled coffee twice. My patients noticed. My coworkers noticed. But I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. Every time the door opened, my heart slammed against my ribs, expecting the man from the street to walk in. But he didn't. Instead, just before lunch my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No contact photo. No signature. Just one line. "Did you show her the truth yet?" My blood turned to ice. I looked around the clinic. Everyone going about their day like the world wasn't folding in on itself. I typed back with trembling fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Too fast. Someone who's tired of watching you lie." I locked my phone, chest tightening. This wasn't him. My ex never typed like that. He wasn't subtle, he didn't play games. This felt like someone else. Someone involved but hidden. Someone who wanted to remain unseen. When I clocked out early, I drove straight to the police station, rehearsing what I would say. A threatening letter. A man watching my house. A message from an unknown number. Possible danger to my daughter. But when I walked up to the front doors, my ex-husband was there, waiting, leaning against the brick wall like he owned the place. My stomach dropped. He looked far too calm, too collected. Not at all like someone who had left a threatening message at my door. He pushed off the wall. "Don't go inside." Froze. "Why?" "Because," he said quietly, "if you start this, it won't end the way you think." My pulse spiked. "You sent the letter." His eyebrows pulled together. "What letter?" I studied his face. He wasn't lying. He wasn't clever enough to hide a reaction that well. So if he didn't send it, where were you this morning? I demanded. He shrugged. At work. Why? There it was again. He genuinely didn't know. Which meant someone else wanted us to think he did. Someone was stirring the fire between us, feeding both sides, keeping us blind. I swallowed hard. Then tell me why someone is watching the house. Why someone texted me about the truth. Why someone used your handwriting to threaten me. His face finally tightened, fear slipping through the cracks. What handwriting? I pulled the letter from my pocket and handed it over. He stared at it, held it closer, then whispered, "This isn't me." That was the moment I believed him. Not because I wanted to, God knows I didn't, but because the fear in his voice was real. "Then who?" asked. He shook his head slowly. "I don't know." Lie. Not because he was hiding something, but because he was afraid to admit the truth forming in both our minds. This wasn't about our divorce, or our daughter, or the funding. This was something older, more dangerous, and much closer than either of us had realized. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to listen to me," he whispered. "Whoever's doing this, they don't want our daughter turning against you." My heart thundered. Then what do they want? He looked over his shoulder, checking the area. Then back at me. "They want her to think I did it." I felt the ground shift beneath me. The realization hit like a punch. This wasn't a fight between us. It never had been. It was a setup, manipulation, an orchestrated campaign. Not to break me, not to break him, but to break the fragile bond between us. The one person we both loved. And then he said something that froze my blood completely. "Before you go home, check her room. There's something there you're not supposed to find." Those words followed me all the way home. And when I opened her bedroom door, I realized he was right. Because taped under her desk, hidden carefully out of sight, was a second letter. This one addressed to her. And the signature at the bottom was a name I hadn't seen in 13 years. The name at the bottom of the letter hit me harder than any threat, any insult, any attack ever could. I read it once. A third time, just to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. But no, it was there. Written in a familiar looping style. Elegant but cold. Serena Whitlock. A name I had erased from my life. Você diz. Foca o capítulo 6 o chat GPT diz. Here is chapter 6, fully in English, 7,000 characters, continuing the story smoothly. Chapter 6. The will she never expected to see. I didn't sleep that night. Not for a second. I lay awake in the living room, the lamp glowing softly beside me, replaying my daughter's words in my head over and over. The best gift would be if you just died. It didn't matter how many times I tried to push the sentence away. It returned like a slap, echoing through the walls of my mind. I wondered when she stopped being my daughter. Or worse, if she ever really had been. The next morning, the solution came from the very thing she thought she controlled. The money. If she truly saw me as nothing more than a bank, then it was time to remove myself from her economy completely. So I drove to the one place she never expected me to go. My lawyer's office. I hadn't updated my will in over a decade. Back then, it felt natural to leave everything to Emily. My house, my savings, my retirement funds. It would all go to her because she was my only child, the one I raised alone, the one I thought would love me simply because I had loved her first. But now my hands shook as I sat across from Richard, my attorney of 20 years. He was in his 70s, with a bald head, soft voice, and eyes that could see through anyone. He adjusted his glasses, studying me carefully. "You look exhausted," he said. "Is everything all right?" "No," I answered truthfully. "But I know what I need to do." He leaned forward. "Tell me." I took a breath so deep it hurt my ribs. "I want to revise my will." His eyebrows lifted, slightly but knowingly. "I assume this involves your daughter." "She told me to die," I said, my voice cracking before I could stop it. "She said the only gift she wanted was my death." Richard froze. He had seen families rip each other apart over money, but this was different. He wasn't expecting that. "I see," he finally murmured. "I'm sorry. I don't want her inheriting anything," I continued. "Not the house, not the savings, not a single thing." He nodded. "We can do that. But may I ask, who would you prefer to name as beneficiary instead? That question lodged in my throat like a thorn. Ooh. Who else was left? I didn't have siblings. My parents were long gone. Emily had isolated me so much over the years that there wasn't anyone who had stood by my side. Except, a memory flickered. A woman with soft hands and an even softer voice. A woman who brought meals when I was sick. Who checked on me during storms. Who invited me for Christmas dinners when Emily forgot. Who never once asked for anything in return. Margaret. My neighbor. My friend. My only friend. It felt both strange and comforting to say the words out loud. I want to leave everything to Margaret Green, I whispered. Richard blinked, but he didn't protest. He simply wrote the name down. And you're sure? He asked gently. Yes, I said. She's been family to me in ways my own daughter refused to be. He nodded again. Then we'll make it official. We spent the next hour signing, revising, confirming. With each signature, it was like a weight lifted from my chest. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking my life back, even if it was through paperwork. But as we finished, Richard hesitated. There's something else you should know, he said. My heart tightened. What do you mean? He slid a document across the desk. A copy of a letter that looked eerily familiar. Last month, he said slowly, your daughter came to see me. My pulse spiked. What? Why? She asked about your estate. Specifically. She wanted to know if she could be assigned as power of attorney. Felt physically sick. Emily had been preparing for this. Not just hoping I'd die. Planning for what would happen when I did. And since she didn't have your consent, I refused, Richard said firmly. But I think it's important that you know. She's been thinking about your assets long before you canceled her funding. My stomach churned. The pieces clicked together. Her anger. Her insults. Her entitlement. Her sudden obsession with my accounts. Her explosion when I finally said no. She wasn't just greedy. She wasn't just manipulative. She was waiting, like a predator waiting for its prey to collapse on its own. I left the office feeling colder than the morning wind. The world, which already felt unstable, now felt dangerous too. As I got into my car, I stared at the steering wheel, breathing shakily. What kind of mother fears her own child? When I returned home, the answer was already waiting for me, buzzing on my phone. 10 missed calls, 12 messages, a voice note from Emily screaming my name, and the final text. If you cut me off, you'll regret it. I swear. Not a daughter's plea. Threat. Something inside me shifted then. Not just fear but clarity. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a bad moment. This was who she had become. And for the first time in my life, I realized this story wasn't about saving her. It was about surviving her. I don't know what I expected after rewriting my will. Relief. Closure. Maybe a small, fragile sense of peace. What I didn't expect was terror, pounding on my door before sunrise. Started at 5:12 a.m. I was asleep on the couch again. Sleep had become a stranger to me, when a violent knocking jolted me upright. Not a polite knock. Not a tap. Fist. Repeated. Furious. At first I froze, my body still trapped between dream and panic. Then the voice came through the wood. Open the door. Emily. My daughter. My blood. The person I used to rock to sleep, protect from nightmares, and bake birthday cakes for every year. Now she sounded like someone who wanted to tear the house apart brick by brick. I crept toward the door, my hands shaking. I didn't open it. I didn't even touch the handle. I just stood there listening. Mom, I know you're in there. Don't play stupid. Her voice cracked, not with sadness but with raw rage. My phone started buzzing again. Another call. Another voicemail. Another message that made my spine stiffen. Did you seriously go to a lawyer? Are you insane? So she knew. She already knew. Somehow, she had found out about the will within hours. I forced myself to breathe as steadily as possible, even though my lungs felt like they were filling with stones. I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone with trembling fingers. "Emily, please leave," I typed. "We can talk later." She read it instantly. Her reply came 3 seconds later. "I'm not leaving until you fix this mistake." Mistake. That was the word she used to describe my decision about my life. She began pounding again, harder now. Something hit the door, maybe her foot, maybe her shoulder. The frame vibrated with each impact. "Called the police." My voice shook as I described the situation. The operator listened, then told me officers were on the way. Minutes felt like hours. Emily kept screaming, threats, accusations, demands. At one point she called me a thief. In my own home. For not giving her what she believed belonged to her. But then she said something that made the blood drain from my face. "What did that old man tell you?" "I'm not stupid. I know he poisoned your mind. I should have gone back and made him give me what I wanted." I covered my mouth to stop myself from gasping. She went back to my lawyer's office. What had she done? What was she capable of when anger took full control? Before I could spiral further, red and blue lights painted the walls through the curtains. The yelling stopped. Footsteps shifted. Voices, deep, authoritative ones, filled the air. I didn't open the door until an officer knocked gently and called my name. "Ma'am, it's safe." When I stepped outside, I found Emily arguing with 2 officers, her face streaked with tears, manufactured ones. She pointed at me as if I were the one who had lost control. "Mom, please," she cried. "I just want to talk." It was a performance. Show. One officer stood between us. "Your daughter needs to leave for the day," he said. "We've explained that this is your private property and she can't harass you." Harass. Hearing the word from someone else's mouth made my stomach twist. Emily's face hardened. The tears evaporated instantly. "This isn't over," she said quietly. Not shouting now, worse. Cold. The officers escorted her to her car. I watched her drive away slowly, her eyes never leaving mine through the windshield. It felt like she was memorizing my fear. After they left, I locked every door, every window, every sliding latch. Something deep inside me whispered that this wasn't just an argument anymore. This was a war. Hours later, my neighbor Margaret knocked gently. My only safe knock that day. "I saw the police," she said, worry etched across her face. "Are you all right?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to pretend everything was fine. Instead, I burst into tears. Loud, ugly, uncontrollable. She held me like a mother holds a shaking child, even though I was the older one between us. When I finally calmed down, she guided me to the couch and brought tea. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't push. She simply sat beside me until my breathing slowed. Eventually the words came out. All of them. What Emily had said. What she had done. What she had become. Margaret listened without blinking. When I finished, she exhaled slowly, as if releasing a truth she'd been holding onto. "I've watched her behavior for years," she admitted. "I never wanted to interfere, but she doesn't treat you like a daughter treats a mother. She treats you like a tool." That hurt, but not because it was wrong. 'Cause it was right. So painfully right. "You're not safe alone," she said gently. "Not while she's this angry. You can stay here tonight." I shook my head. "I won't run from my own home." "But you shouldn't be unprotected," she insisted. "Please, let me stay here with you then." And so she did. We spent the evening together, lights dim, TV murmuring in the background, even though neither of us were watching it. I kept checking the windows, expecting shadows to appear. My heartbeat refused to settle. At 11 p.m., Margaret fell asleep in the recliner. I stayed awake a little longer, staring at my phone. No messages from Emily. No calls. An absence louder than any knock. Before going to bed, I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow, something has to change." Because deep down, I knew the next move wouldn't come from me. It would come from her. And she wasn't done yet. I woke before the sun, the way people wake during storms. Suddenly, with a sense that something is already wrong. Margaret was still asleep in the recliner, wrapped in the blanket I'd given her. The house was quiet, but the quiet didn't feel peaceful. Felt suspended. Like everything was holding its breath. I slipped into the kitchen and turned on the kettle, trying to focus on normal things. Small things. Cup of tea. Slice of toast. Something steady to hold on to. But the silence kept dripping into my thoughts, one heavy drop at a time. When the kettle clicked off, I reached for my phone. One notification lit up the screen. One new email. Forwarded to you by mistake. From my attorney. Mistake. That word alone sent a shiver through me. Opened it. First it looked like a normal office message. Then I saw the attachment. Screenshot. And the title. Your daughter contacted our staff today. My throat tightened. Hands trembling, I opened the image. It was an internal message. One of the paralegals had written to my lawyer asking how to respond to Emily. But it wasn't the staff's message that terrified me. It was the message from my daughter that they had pasted below it. Emily had emailed the firm at 2:47 a.m. Her words burned through me like acid. My mother is being manipulated. She's not mentally competent. I need the will undone before someone gets hurt. If you refuse to help, you'll be responsible for what happens next. Not mentally competent. Not mentally competent. She was trying to take away my autonomy, my voice, my right to decide what happens to my own life. But it didn't stop there. Her final line made my blood go cold. I will come to the office again tomorrow. We're not done. Tomorrow. Which meant today. The tea went cold in my hands. I walked into the living room and gently shook Margaret awake. Something happened, I whispered. She blinked, sat up, and immediately read the fear in my face. What is it? I showed her the email. Her lips pressed into a thin, horrified line. She's trying to paint you as unstable, she murmured. That's calculated. She's not reacting anymore, she's planning. Planning. The same word the doctor had whispered to me long ago, after diagnosing me with stress-induced arrhythmia. Your body doesn't shut down from one shock, he'd said. It shuts down from repeated trauma, layered over time. Emily wasn't the reason for my illness, but she was the reason it never healed. Margaret looked at me with steady eyes. You need protection, not just a friend sleeping in your chair. I can't go to the police again, I whispered. They'll say it's just a family dispute. No, she said softly. You need to show them a pattern. A pattern? She nodded. Messages. That. Attempts to manipulate legal processes. You have proof now. I exhaled shakily. I can try. But before I could gather everything, before I could even move to the desk, my phone buzzed again. Text message. From Emily. I didn't want to open it. But I did. We're talking today. You can't avoid me forever. Another message followed instantly. If you won't answer, I'll come there. Margaret and I looked at each other. She's watching the house, Margaret whispered. She knows you're awake. I moved slowly to the front window, staying behind the curtain, and peeked through a narrow gap. Car sat at the end of the street. Silver. Unmoving. Engine off. Even from a distance, I recognized the shape of her silhouette. She's been out there all morning, I murmured. Margaret's hand clasped mine. This is obsession, not anger. I couldn't stop the tremor that passed through me. What do I do? You don't go outside, she said firmly. You don't speak to her. You document everything. And then, you call someone who can actually help. Who? Yes. She hesitated. Then she said the last person I expected. Your sister. I stared at her. No, I said immediately. We haven't spoken in years. Doesn't matter, Margaret replied. She's still family, and she won't let Emily swallow you whole. But she didn't understand. My sister and I had cut ties for a reason, one I wasn't ready to reopen. Still, my heart whispered that Margaret might be right. The kettle clicked again, startling both of us. Margaret stepped into the kitchen to pour herself a cup, and I returned to the living room, staring at my phone. Emily's car hadn't moved. Then, another vibration. This time it was a voicemail. Not from Emily. From my attorney. Press play. His voice sounded tense, cautious, almost frightened. Miss Carter, please call me back as soon as possible. Your daughter was here when we opened. She created a disturbance, demanded private files, and refused to leave until security escorted her out. For your safety and ours, we're formally suspending all contact with her. Also, she said something that concerned us greatly, and I think you need to hear it directly. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. She said, if my mother wants a war, she's chosen the wrong opponent. My stomach dropped. A war my own child had declared. Margaret came back into the room just as I finished the voicemail. Her eyes widened when she saw my face. What now? She asked quietly. I swallowed. She went to the firm again. They had to remove her. And she said. I couldn't repeat the words. I didn't need to. Margaret understood. She put her hand on my shoulder. I think it's time, she said gently, to stop hoping she'll go back to who she was. My voice cracked. She's still my daughter. No, Margaret whispered. She's someone else now. Before I could respond, there was sudden movement at the end of the street. Emily's car door opened. She stepped out and began walking toward my house. Low, deliberate, determined. Margaret grabbed my wrist. Get away from the door, she said. Now. But I couldn't move. Because in that moment, watching my daughter walk toward me like a stranger with a mission, I realized something heartbreaking. The girl I raised was gone. The woman approaching me now was someone entirely different. Someone who believed I was her enemy. The PDF loaded slowly, as if aware of the weight it carried. When it finally opened, the world around me went still. My breath hitched. My pulse throbbed in my ears. Every instinct I had, every maternal human self-protective instinct, told me I was staring at something I was not meant to see. It wasn't a single document. It was a compiled folder. Dozens of pages. Screenshots, bank projections, typed conversations, notes written in my daughter's handwriting. And at the top of the file, the title, Projected Estate Division, Post-Event. Post-Event. I knew immediately what that meant. My hands trembled so badly the tablet almost slipped from my fingers. The first page listed my assets. My home, my retirement accounts, the rental property, the savings account she had always pretended not to know the balance of. Everything was itemized, valued, color-coded. Notes on how it should be fairly redistributed. Notes that referenced timelines. Months, not years. The second page was even worse. A conversation transcript between my daughter and her husband. I read it through blurry eyes. Daughter, we need to push her emotionally. She's getting weaker. The stress will do the job. Son-in-law. It has to look natural. No investigations. No drama. Daughter, if she would just sign the transfer authorization first. Son-in-law, she will. Keep applying pressure. Guilt works. So does anger. Daughter, I want this done before the end of the year. Before the end of the year. My daughter, the child I raised alone, the little girl who used to cry if I left the room, the teenager who once held my hand in her sleep after a nightmare, was planning my death like a business transaction. Strategizing it. Coordinating it with her husband. Calculating profit margins and inheritance streams. The ground beneath me felt non-existent. Kept reading. There were handwritten notes too. My daughter's cursive. Elegant, looping, unmistakable. She's getting older. One illness is all it'll take. She trusts me. Use that. Make her feel like a burden. When she gives up, we win. I clapped a hand over my mouth, afraid I would scream. My stomach twisted violently. A physical rejection of the betrayal staring back at me. Then I reached the final page. And that was the one that changed everything. It was a draft letter. A professional, cold, to whom it may concern. Due to our mother's declining mental health and erratic behavior, we believe she is no longer capable of managing her own affairs. They were preparing a competency petition, a legal strategy to take control of everything before I even realized what they were doing. The note continued. We fear she may be a danger to herself. Immediate transfer of authority is recommended. A danger to myself. I had spent my life doing nothing but protecting her. My vision darkened at the edges. And then I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Date. Stamped in the corner. The petition draft had been created 6 months ago. 6 months. Long before the fights. Long before the guilt trips. Long before the night she told me I should die. They had been planning this long before they gave me any reason to suspect. The worst part wasn't the plot. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was the tone. Businesslike. Routine. As if discussing the disposal of furniture rather than the destruction of a human being. My life, my autonomy, my dignity. I stood up so quickly the chair screeched across the floor. My hands were cold. My face was hot. My heart felt bruised, kicked, torn. I staggered to the hallway mirror and stared at the reflection. I didn't recognize the woman looking back. And then the tears came. Silent, steady, relentless. Not because I was weak, but because I finally understood the gravity of what I was up against. This wasn't a fight with my daughter. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't years of tension boiling over. This was an orchestrated act of erasure. A plan to dismantle my life piece by piece until I no longer had the strength to resist. My daughter didn't want me to die in anger. She wanted me to die in confusion. In despair. Conveniently. Quietly. Profitably. I wiped my face, took a shaky breath, and whispered to the empty room. Not anymore. You're not taking anything else from me. My voice sounded different. Harder, sharper, alive in a way it hadn't been for years. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing my daughter. Because I realized she was already gone. What stood in front of me now wasn't my child. It was my adversary. And adversaries don't get mercy. They get consequences. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. Fear had burned itself out hours ago, leaving something sharper in its place. Something steadier. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. By morning the decision was made. I was done reacting. I was done absorbing every blow, every guilt trip, every calculated humiliation. If my daughter wanted to turn my life into a battlefield, then I was going to stop fighting like a victim. I would fight like someone with nothing left to lose. The preparations. Gathered everything. Every screenshot, every draft, every note, every financial projection. I saved copies, encrypted them, printed them, stored backups in 3 different places. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. Then I made calls. My lawyer answered on the second ring. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds after I explained what I'd found. Finally he said, "You need to come in today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today." Packed a bag. Not out of panic, but because I knew walking back into that house was no longer safe. My daughter's words echoed again. The best gift would be if you just died. No one says that by accident. Not when the rest of the plan proves they meant it. My lawyer read through everything in complete silence. When he finished, he took off his glasses, folded them carefully, and looked at me with something between pity and admiration. "Mrs. Avery," he said, "this is not just coercion. This is not just financial abuse. This is a criminal conspiracy." The word criminal hit me like a cold wind. I always thought those things happened to other people. Isolated news stories, tragedies whispered in neighborhood conversations. Not to mothers. Not to grandmothers. Not to people who sacrificed everything for their children. But they do. And they did. Me. He continued. "We're filing for a protective order. Immediately. You will not return to that home alone. If they attempt contact, you notify me and we take action." He was calm. Professional. But I could see anger behind his eyes. Anger on my behalf. It was almost enough to make me break down again. Almost. Instead I nodded. "What happens next?" He slid a stack of forms toward me. "We take back your legal power. All of it. The confrontation they never expected. My daughter called that afternoon. I didn't answer. Her voicemail was syrupy sweet, pretending nothing had happened, pretending everything was normal. "Mom, can we talk about last night? You were being dramatic. I think we should just meet, okay? I'm worried about you." Another lie. Another performance. Then the second voicemail came. And that one wasn't sweet. "Are you ignoring me? Don't start this, Mom. You know I hate being shut out. Call me back. Now." The third was even worse. "You better not be doing anything stupid. If you go to a lawyer, it'll only prove you're losing it. Don't make this harder." Losing it. The words from the drafted competency petition. They weren't improvising anymore. They were reading from a script they'd already written. I didn't reply. Instead, with my lawyer beside me, I sent one message. "All communication must now go through legal counsel." My daughter responded within 3 minutes. "What the hell are you doing?" But it didn't matter. Nothing she said mattered anymore. The moment I pressed send, the dynamic shifted. She wasn't the puppeteer. She wasn't the strategist. She wasn't the one pulling strings. It was. And she felt it. The breaking point. That evening, my lawyer received a long, frantic email from her. Half threats, half manipulative apologies, the kind she used to give me when she was a teenager trying to escape consequences. But this time she slipped. She referenced things she shouldn't have known. Details she should only know if she had been tracking me, monitoring me, or accessing information illegally. My lawyer looked at me over the top of his screen. "This helps us," he said simply. And suddenly, the victory wasn't some distant fantasy. It was real, tangible, within reach. But there was one more thing I needed to do. Not for court. Not for revenge. For myself. I needed to hear the truth from her mouth. Call. Against every warning, against every instinct, I called her. She picked up instantly. "Mom. Finally. Are you ready to stop being unreasonable?" I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked one of my own. My voice was calm, steady, colder than she'd ever heard it. "Did you really plan to let me die?" There was a pause. Dark. Frozen. Electric. Then she laughed. Nervous. Guilty. "Mom. You're being dramatic. No one wants you to die. We just thought." "We." I repeated. She inhaled sharply but kept going. "You weren't managing things well. We thought you needed help. Help doesn't come with inheritance calculations." Silence again. Trembling. Then she snapped. "You weren't supposed to see that." And there it was. The confession, not of guilt, but of intention. I closed my eyes, letting the confirmation settle like a stone. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" she demanded. "For proving exactly who you've become." Hung up. And for the first time since the nightmare began, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. Not hope. Not yet. Power. A shift. That night, I stayed in a small hotel room the lawyer arranged. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur into gold and white streaks as cars passed below. The world outside kept moving. And so would I. I wasn't the fragile woman they thought they could corner. I wasn't the exhausted mother desperate to keep the peace. I was someone rebuilding herself from ash. Someone dangerous. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood how much my survival was worth. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. Police reports, court filings, protective orders, financial locks, emergency injunctions. But tonight I sat in silence, letting the truth settle. They expected me to break. Instead, I'm becoming someone they should have never provoked. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my mind, but nothing truly prepares you for facing your own child across a courtroom, especially when her eyes hold nothing but resentment, entitlement, and the faint hope that she might still win. The room was cold, too cold, as if the air itself didn't want to choose a side. Lawyers whispered, papers rustled, the judge adjusted her glasses, but all I could hear was the echo of my daughter's voice from that day. "The best gift would be if you just died." Those words were carved into me. They carried me through every painful step leading to this moment. My attorney leaned toward me. She will testify first. They come. No matter what she says. As if calmness was a coat I could just slip into. My daughter stood and walked to the witness stand with the confidence of someone who believed the world still owed her something. She was dressed impeccably, hair straightened, makeup flawless, the picture of the sweet, misunderstood daughter she wanted everyone to see. The judge nodded. "You may proceed." And she began. "She abandoned me. She cut me off financially out of spite. She's trying to ruin my life because she can't accept that I'm an adult." Her voice trembled in all the right places. She dabbed at imaginary tears. "She refuses to help me, refuses to support me, refuses to be a mother." Every word was a needle, not because it hurt but because of how deliberate it was. She had rehearsed this. She had built this persona carefully, stone by stone. Then her lawyer asked, "Why do you believe your mother ended financial support?" She lowered her head, portraying heartbreak to perfection. "Because she hates me." I closed my eyes for a second. Not from pain, from exhaustion. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand slowly, refusing to hide my age or the truth written on my face. I wasn't here to perform. I wasn't here to manipulate. I was here to finally speak. "Mrs. Carter," my attorney began, "in your own words, why did you stop supporting your daughter?" I breathed in deeply. "Because she asked me to die." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge lifted her eyes sharply. My attorney nodded. "Can you elaborate?" I did. I explained the years of disrespect, the entitlement, the verbal assaults. I showed the messages. Not the ones she had doctored for her case, but the real ones. The ones she sent when she thought she'd never need me again. I read one aloud. "You're useless. You're in my way. The best gift you can give me would be dying and leaving me your money." The silence afterward was suffocating. Her expression cracked. A twitch of panic flickered across her face. She hadn't expected me to have proof. She hadn't believed I would fight back. She thought I would collapse under guilt and memories. But I didn't. My attorney continued. "Did you ever abandon your daughter?" "No." "Did you ever wish her harm?" "Never." "Did you ever stop loving her?" At that my voice broke, just once. "No. Not even when she tried to destroy me." Then came the moment that changed everything. Her lawyer stood, struggling to recover control. "Mrs. Carter, if you love your daughter so much, why bring this to court? Why escalate things?" I looked directly at my daughter, really looked, past her anger, past her selfishness, past the wall she built to hide her insecurities. "Because loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you," I said. "And motherhood is not slavery." I raised her. I supported her. "But I will not die for her." My words echoed in the room. No one moved. Her lawyer stammered something about financial expectations, but the damage was done. The truth had finally stood up, loud and undeniable. When the judge spoke, her voice was sharp and decisive. "Given the evidence presented, this court finds no grounds for financial obligation. The accusations of abandonment are unfounded. Furthermore, the language used by the plaintiff toward her mother is deeply concerning." My daughter's face drained of color. Then the judge delivered the blow neither of us expected. "I am ordering mandatory therapy sessions for the plaintiff. This behavior indicates unresolved psychological issues that require intervention." My daughter shot to her feet. "You can't force me." "Sit down," the judge warned sternly. For the first time, she wasn't in control. For the first time, the world wasn't bending to her tantrums. When court adjourned, she stormed out without looking back. I stayed in my seat for a long moment, shaking, not from fear, but from the weight leaving my shoulders. 13 years of sacrifice. 13 years of loving someone who believed love was a currency she could demand. My attorney touched my arm gently. "You did the right thing." I wasn't sure yet, but for the first time in years, I felt something close to breathing again. For a week after the court ruling, The house felt painfully silent. Not peacefully quiet, but the kind of silence that follows a storm, when the broken branches are still scattered across the ground and you're left wondering how much will grow back. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with another insult, another accusation, another attempt from my daughter to twist the narrative. But it didn't. Nothing came. The quiet was unsettling. I spent those days cleaning, cooking, sitting in my garden, trying to find pieces of myself I didn't realize I had lost. Motherhood had filled my entire life. Every hour, every choice, every sacrifice. And somewhere along the way, I had forgotten who I was without being the one people leaned on. On the 8th morning, just as I finally started to breathe normally again, the doorbell rang. Froze. A part of me instinctively braced, expecting shouting, demands, the same cycle of chaos. But when I opened the door, my daughter wasn't angry. She was crying. Not the dramatic crying she used in front of others. Not the performative tears she squeezed out when she wanted pity. This was different. Real. Her makeup was smudged, her hair unbrushed, her shoulders trembling beneath a jacket too light for the cold morning air. "Mom!" she whispered, and the word broke apart in her throat. I didn't invite her in. Not yet. Boundaries, I had learned, were not cruelty. They were survival. She looked down, ashamed. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, allowing her in. She stood in the living room as if it were her first time there. "Before you say anything," she said, wiping her face, "I want you to know I'm not here to ask for money." I nodded but didn't speak. It was her turn to fill the silence she had created. I didn't want it to go that far," she whispered. "The court thing. The things I said." "You said them," I replied calmly. "You meant them." She winced, as if the truth physically hurt. Then she sank onto the sofa and buried her face in her hands. "Mom, I was angry. I felt like you were choosing yourself over me. And I didn't know how to handle it. I thought if I pushed harder, if I scared you a little." She looked up, tears shining. "I didn't expect you to fight back." There it was. The confession. Not an apology. Not yet. But the realization that I wasn't the unbreakable, unconditional provider she assumed I'd always be. "I thought you didn't care," she continued. "I thought you were pulling away." "I wasn't pulling away," I said softly. "I was drowning." She stared at me, stunned. "You never told me that. Because every time I tried to talk to you, you turned it into an attack. Or a demand. Or a guilt trip." She blinked rapidly, absorbing the blow of truth. "I didn't realize I was hurting you," she whispered. "You didn't want to realize," I corrected. "And that's the part that isn't something I can fix." She nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, her pride cracked open enough for understanding to slip in. "I went to the therapy sessions," she said suddenly. I looked at her, surprised. "The ones the judge ordered?" "Yes. I think I needed them." She laughed weakly. "The therapist asked me why I believed you owed me everything. I didn't have an answer. I just kept saying she's my mother. But even I knew that wasn't enough." I exhaled, a long, heavy exhale I didn't know I had been holding. She stood and walked toward the kitchen counter, where an old photo of us sat in a frame. Her 5th birthday party, both of us smiling, our faces covered in chocolate frosting. "I used to be someone you were proud of," she whispered, touching the frame. "You still can be," I said. "But you have to choose it." She turned to me with eyes swollen and red. "I'm sorry." Not dramatic. Not manipulative. Not weaponized. Just pure. A real apology. The kind I had stopped believing I would ever hear. I walked toward her and held her hands gently. "I accept your apology," I said. "But our relationship can't go back to what it was." She lowered her head. "I know. We need rules, boundaries, respect. And I can't fund your life anymore. I won't put myself in debt or misery to keep you comfortable." She nodded again, this time without protest. "I'll get a job," she said. "A real one. And I'll figure things out. I don't want to lose you." "You haven't lost me," I whispered. "But you almost did." Her tears returned, but not the loud kind. quiet, trembling, heavy with understanding. We spent the rest of the morning talking. Not as a mother holding up the world for her daughter, but as two people rebuilding something shattered. When she finally left, she hugged me tighter than she had in over a decade. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I love you too," I replied. "But this time I love myself too." And that, more than any court ruling, more than any therapy session, was the moment everything truly changed.